Welcome to the RaceGuru Thunder Hour. I'm your co-host, Rich Maletto. You can find me on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at Fantasy Bosco. I'm joined, as always, usually, always, however you want to look at it, the man, the myth, the legend behind the curtain, Sean Engel. You can find on Twitter at Sean E247. Remember, that's Sean EA and the real way to spell Sean. No offense to anybody else out there. Hey, welcome to the RaceGuru Thunder Hour. This is brought to you by FantasyGuru.com. All a part of the Elite Plus network. Please head over to fantasyguru.com, click the subscribe button, check out and see what packages we got for you. I got to tell you, we've been changing it pricing. It's still been great pricing, but here's my tip. If you want to get everything, if you're going to get everything for football, which I highly recommend, contact support at Fantasy Guru. Tell them you're still interested in the all-in, all-inclusive package. If you talk nicely, they may hook you up where you get everything for the same price as you would for all the football content. And then that gets you Rays, MLB stuff, all the DFS MLB stuff, which MLB Model's been killing it on the betting. He keeps posting that. I mean, he's up, 23 units so far this year. Chris Rose has been knocking it down. Scott Bonder, I believe, has been chiming in. It's been some great stuff. Patio Joe's got a great umpire article that's worth checking out, especially for you DFS users. So please, head on over there, check it out. If you just want the racing stuff, hey, you can still get racing and all the other stuff, NBA, NHL, MMA, PGA, whatnot, for $40 for 12 months. Can't beat it. If nothing else, hit the like and subscribe button there on the YouTube channel, please. Sean, we're back. We're back racing in Nashville. We're back racing on concrete. We had quite the festivities last week. How has your week been so far, man?
This week has been kind of a little bit of a busy week, just digging down into a lot of numbers and other business outside of this podcast. But, I'm at the part of the week where I feel kind of ready to take it all on, Rich. Ready to just go forth and analyze this race front and back. Well, all three series. We have all three going on this week. So first time we said that in a couple weeks. So
been a while since we said that. And unfortunately, the schedule is really condensed. So I'm going to put this out there now so we don't forget to mention it later. It's a really tight schedule. I'm going to be cramming to get the truck article out tonight. All the information is going to be out pre-qualifying practice. I think you're in the same boat for Xfinity on Saturday's event. Here's the deal, folks. I am not sure you're going to see new bet lines after qualifying and practice. It's only about a 2.5 hour window post-qualifying practice from the race for both Xfinity and truck. When we've seen this in the past, we have not seen lines. When we have seen line, it's been winners only, maybe top three. We don't see many head-to-head. So if you want to get in on some of the action, now is the time. Try to take advantage of the soft lines. The overview article, I did highlight some things bets I like. I have a few more in there than normal just because there's a couple of head-to-head. I'll try to get that posted at least for Sunday's Cup event ahead of time. I didn't see too many head-to-head group stuff for trucks or Xfinity yet that I was really targeting, but we are going to be crammed. So check out this podcast, which obviously if you're listening, you're probably already checking out the overview article, and Sean will get it, and I will get you all the information as best we can prior to practice and qualifying. So it's going to be a doozy, man. I will say this. I'm glad we're back at Nashville. I like this track. I like the fact that it's different. It's 1.33 miles. We don't do anywhere else that's that size. It's a little flatter than most of the intermediates, but a little more banking than the New Hampshires of the world. And it's concrete. I know Dale Jr. hates concrete. I don't know, man. Concrete races tend to be I like them at Dover. I like them at Bristol. I get those tracks are similar, high banks, but honestly, when we've even watched at ARCA and some of these other races, concrete tracks tend to put on good racing. I get as a driver not liking them, but as a fan, I like them.
Yeah, concrete races can be very entertaining. We've seen some great moments on concrete-based tracks like Dover and Bristol. I'd argue that Bristol, for example, earlier in the year was one of the more entertaining races to watch overall, and that was on concrete as it is, so should be very interesting to see. Nashville is a very unique track overall this week, so looking forward to diving right in and going through the numbers and seeing what the data gives.
Well, before we do that, let's go ahead and talk about last week. We only had 2 races last week, right? So let's start off with Xfinity. Hey, we both said it on the podcast. We both put it in our articles or thoughts out there. Best car was the 20 car going into the race. We expected that. Bell was the best driver in the field. We expected that. And I'm saying that because he's the one with the most Cup experience that was racing. I mean, no knock on the full-time Xfinity drivers, but there's a reason Bell is one of the hottest drivers in Cup and stepped down to Xfinity. It didn't come easy, Sean. It did not come easy, but Bell did squeak out the win.
Yes, that's right. You can say that Bell practically owns this track now because he's won in about 6 or 7 of his 11 National Series starts in NASCAR, which is absolutely insane. So we can just call this past weekend the Christopher Bell New Hampshire Victory Tour, and the Xfinity Series is part 1 of that, the Earning It in Dry Weather edition.
And the thing is, Sean, to your point, he's 4 for 4 in Xfinity. He's entered 4 races at New Hampshire in Xfinity rides, and he's won all 4. So, not many drivers can say they're 100% at any national level at a track like this. There was still some good racing going on, right? I mean, Bell did earn it, right? He passed me. We were hoping Sheldon Creed was finally going to get past being the bridesmaid, but didn't you tell me he set the record for most second-place finishes without a win so far?
Well, he just tied it as a result of the second-place finish this week at 10. So, you know what? Let's play a quick game here, Rich. Can you guess the other 2 drivers that he's tied with?
Second-place finishes before they got a win or without a win?
Most second-place finishes in Xfinity before they got their first win, because both of the drivers that got 10 runner-up finishes ended up winning.
Okay. Whew, in Xfinity Series.
It's 2 names.
I don't know why I want to say this, but I want to say Alex Bowman, which is probably way off.
He is not one of them.
One of them? Okay. And let's see. I remember hearing about this driver because I remember when they got the win, they made a big deal about it. And I'm trying to remember who that was.
Here's a hint. One driver is active in Cup right now. The other one is retired.
Okay. Let's see. Active in Cup. Who? Ryan Preece?
Nope.
I'm at a loss, man.
All right. Well, the answers were the active driver was Daniel Hemrick.
Oh,
and
sure.
And the other one that got 10 runner-up finishes in Xfinity before getting their first Xfinity win was actually Dale Jarrett.
Oh, okay. Okay. I gotcha. I should have known the Hemrick one. I remember, like I said, I knew there was a driver that did, and once you said it, I remember them celebrating Hemrick's win because he did keep not only did he have a bunch of seconds, he had a bunch of thirds around that time too. Like he constantly was finishing top 3 or 4 and couldn't get her done. So let's see. Sheldon Creed's let us both down so far the last 2 to 3 seasons. For those of you that don't check out Robbie Gordon's trophy truck stuff, Sheldon Creed runs that. He's usually the class of the show. It's kind of fun to watch. Gives you a little insight to why he's such a good road racer. But it was good. Look, Creed and Custer battling for the win, before Bell got in there. All 3 ended up top 3. They were all good cars. Custer definitely was the car to beat at one point. I think some of that was because, Bell was buried in the back due to the way qualifying was. So Bell was a little bit more of a risky play starting, was 27th, 32nd, somewhere near the back, like 23rd, something like that.
Yeah, he did end up starting deep through the field just because the qualifying was set by the book, if I remember correctly.
The equation they use, which, if you wrecked the previous race or weren't in, we had guys all over the place as far as where they started. Hey, our boy Carson Guapo, though, man. Tell you what, when you go to a short track, you might as well consider him one of the top 5 favorites. I'm curious what we see from him this week because he did perform well at Darlington. Short tracks are his jam. I'm hoping they give him some more practice on some of these intermediate tracks. Hey, he did run well at Dover. He did run well at Bristol. So let's see what he does on the concrete here in Nashville. But he definitely had another, don't get me wrong, pit strategy came into it, but he's been doing a decent job.
Yeah, he's been riding that 88 car to some solid finishes. He did end up getting a top 5 finish just this past weekend at New Hampshire and even led some laps. I know there was the strategy call to get him out there for track position that played a big part into how he got there, but he was still able to keep the car within touch of the other top drivers there, Creed, Custer, and Bell. So hat tip to
Like I
him
said,
there.
anything with a mile and less, man, I'm all in on Guapo. I'm just saying. He's proven enough to me, dude. He's been in 4 races this year, 3 top 5s. The one that wasn't was Darlington. So, I mean, hat tip to the 88 team. Which great guy puts fast cars on the track, no matter who's behind the wheel, right?
And also, hat tip to Quapple for being the best place differential play of the week in Xfinity this past weekend. Both him and Alex Bowman.
I used him a lot, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough, unfortunately, for my lineups, but I did use him a lot. What part of the reason is because I also used quite a bit of Justin B. He looked the part. He looked the part, man.
Yeah, 3-time modified racing champion. He ends up making a start in that number 19 car. He really looked like he was going to be right there competing with Bell and Custer there within the first 2 stages. But then he just got collected in a spin, and then he just couldn't fully recover after that, which is a shame because he was putting on a real show there, Rich.
He was, and the wreck wasn't his fault. It was one of those wrong place, wrong time type of things. But I hope we see this kid some more. I tell you what, I doubt Joe Gibbs Racing is listening, but you are listening. Dude, stop with the Bells and the Nemecheks and the Gibbs. Let's get more Justin B. Let's get more Corey Heim. Let's get some of these other guys where we know they got good equipment. You got some young guys in there. I know the sponsors want the big names, but I got to tell you, you guys stinking up the Xfinity show doesn't make it fun for fans. Just throwing it out there.
Unless they really do end up putting on a good performance, which that has happened from time to time. Let's be real about that. But
that's true. They're capable. Justin got collected. He probably has a top 10. I expected him to finish somewhere around 6th or 8th based on the way he was running on Saturday. I think Corey Heim, you put him in one of those cars. We've seen it once this year. He performed well in it, right? So I'd like to see some of these younger guys. Stage 1 winner was Sam Mayer. Again, Sam Mayer, I said I'm not ready to put him in the Cup driver discussion yet, but he is in the discussion for one of the best Xfinity drivers right now on the circuit. He's going to be a factor for the championship, so keep your eye on the number 1 car there. And then Christopher Bell won Stage 2, and he kind of stole the show from the rest of the way out from there. Had his own battles, but for the most part, everybody was watching where that car was at. We had multiple lap leaders. Cole Custer, as you noted, dominated early, 114 laps led. Bell had 43. Guapo with 24. Mayer with 9. Justin Bonsignor.
Yep, you got it.
3. Jesse Love, 3. Sammy Smith, 3. Austin Hill, 2. Chandler Smith, 1. Did have higher hopes for Chandler Smith. Sheldon Creed, 1. Couple of standout finishers. Hey, Allgaier back in the top 5. Ryan Sieg, he gets it done, man. He's not a consistent top 5, top 10 guy, but he is a consistent top 15 driver. Parker Kligerman, 7th. Raleigh Hurst, had a little higher hopes for him, coming in 8th. Alex Bowman, 9th. Corey Heim, 10th. A third top 10 in 8 starts this year for Xfinity, and it was with Sam Hunt Racing. So getting it done again. Dinger still seems to be off of pace a little bit, man. Coming back 11th. Sammy Smith finally not getting his top 10, top 5 finish. Was a little disappointed there, back in 12th. Brandon Jones recovered nice from the way he started qualifying because, like you said, by the book. So he was back in 29th. So he moved up to 14th. Again, Chandler Smith had higher hopes, man. 15th is not what I think that team was looking for. And hat tip to Brennan Poole. We did highlight him. We did talk about him. He was in the article. Brennan Poole got her done, man, 16th.
He's making that Alpha Prime equipment really look pretty solid this year. He's been outperforming that equipment on more than a couple of occasions. And really, if he keeps pulling out these good finishes and some of those drivers on the playoff cut line have trouble, he could be kind of a sleeper to make it even in on points even.
That's a valid point. He really has. So hat tip there. I mean, that was a little shocking. Some of the other guys, Mayer, Austin Hill, Josh Williams, very disappointed with their nearly 20th, 19th, 23rd, 24th place finishes. They got in some trouble, but Austin Hill better start turning the page. It's not looking good. Maybe he's in his own head at this point with all the battles he's having.
Second consecutive finish outside the top 20 for the first time this year for Hill.
Gross. On to the Cup race. Was this the Christopher Bell show take 2, Sean?
Yeah, the Christopher Bell New Hampshire Victory Tour Part 2. The Have the Best Car in Wet Weather edition. That's how I subtitled this section here. But
I got a question for you. Because it was my understanding that New Hampshire was going to fall under the short track package with the wiper, the mud flaps, and the potential wet tires, but they didn't have any wipers from what I saw out there.
They did not have the wipers. They had the tires ready, though, which clearly, as we saw, they were put into use. We raced with wet weather tires for the first time on an oval in the Cup Series in a points-paying race. Let's make that very clear.
It's because we did it at North Wilkesboro, but that doesn't count because it wasn't points-paying. The end of the race, NASCAR dictated what the teams had to do on pit stops. Sean and I aren't going to get into it because I'm already having a bad day and I don't want to get any more angry. I'll just leave it at this. I'm not a fan of having competitors compete when the sanctioning body tells you how to compete. Like, that defeats the purpose of competition. But to your point, when we talked earlier this week, I think they were trying to get some test info. I think they were trying to find some limitations on what they can do with this wet tire, when they can run it, that sort of thing. At the same time, I'd rather have them sanction a test and do it that way than do it while I'm trying to watch a race.
Well, I'm sure that NASCAR probably wanted to get the data with actual race conditions rather than testing conditions, because it is pretty different between the two types of circumstances as it is when you're racing with a very large pack compared to a few cars on the track at a time. I can get that aspect, but I still also wish that maybe after 2 pit stops where NASCAR decide everybody should get the tires, that they should leave it up to the teams to decide from there in order to go onto slicks or to the wet tires like that. That's what I think.
I don't disagree. The idea of a race is to let teams figure out the best way to get from A to B as quick as possible. Doesn't have to be the fastest, but literally the first one from the beginning of 300, 0 to 300. It is what it is. As much as Bell did well, and he was savvy. He was hugging that apron. He was fine wetness with the tires. He did a much better job of taking care of the tires than, say, Kyle Larson, who looked quick at one point with 20 to go or so, but he ate up the tire. But hat tip to the Stewart Haas guys of Chase Briscoe and Josh Berry.
Yeah, absolutely big hat tip to them, because at one point before the rain, both of those drivers were looking at finishes outside the top 20 even, and then they just went through the field and came back to finish second and third. That's Chase Briscoe in second, Josh Berry in third. Berry in particular, he ties his best result of the year too.
Yeah, Barry's got one coming, man. He's on the cusp. He really is. Toyota came back. They did dominate this race. We were fearful of that. Toyota's led 245 of the 305 laps. All 4 of the Joe Gibbs. Well, no,
it's not all Gibbs. It was a mix between their different teams, but 4 of the manufacturer's drivers did finish inside the top 10 with Bell, Reddick, John Hunter Nemechek ended up scoring a nice finish of 8th, and then Martin Truex Jr., even though we expected more, he still stuck out with a top 10 finish in 9th.
And he spun out. Like, at one point, he was wrecked. So, hat tip to Truex and the team. They haven't really bounced back well when adversity struck this year, and this past weekend they did. 3 of the 4 SHR cars finished 11th or better. Shame, because Noah Gragson was the star of the SHR garage to start the year, and he's been a little quiet lately. But Briscoe second, Berry third, and Priest came home 11th. Nice run for Priest, although you got to figure he's got to do a little bit more. At least Noah's had some of these top finishes to go with Briscoe and Berry, and Priest really hasn't. Hendrick had a tough day. Kyle Larson was the only driver to finish in the top 15, and he was 4th.
That's right.
Stage winners, Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin. Lap leaders, Bell dominated, led almost half the race, 149 laps. Reddick had 53. Hamlin had 43. Chase Elliott did have 41. Chase Elliott looked decent at one point.
Yeah, he had that clean air early and then just took advantage of it to get away from the field until Bell basically chased him down and took over the race from there.
And Elliott was basically not to be heard from. Todd Gilliland keeps, showing up on the stat sheet, man. 19 laps led again this week.
Yeah, Todd Gilliland. We mentioned about Todd Gilliland, and I've been really hammering down on the Todd Gilliland usage on this particular podcast a lot the past couple of weeks. He ends up paying off with another solid finish. He's even got some laps led. That number 38 team, they just keep tugging along for these solid finishes inside the top 15. And Gilliland, he got a 12th place finish again this week. So there you go. Hat tip to that 38 team.
Well, and if Michael McDowell would quit driving over his skis, the 34 team would have been right there too. I mean, that team front row has been getting it done all the way through. Todd Gilliland's is just not driving like a moron at times, like his teammate is. So maybe that's why McDowell's out and Gilliland's in, right? Had a couple of other Fords that finished well, right? Christopher Buescher battled back to 5th. You know, Brad Keselowski was nowhere to be seen for the last half of the race for the most part.
Yeah, he just did not have the car this week.
No, he didn't. Stenhouse had another nice run in 7th. You already mentioned John Hunter Nemechek, but you know the soccer club, they still haven't earned the right for me to call them the real name yet, but the soccer club got her done. I mean, at least with John Hunter. I'll be curious because John Hunter's doing double duty this week, so I'll be curious to see how that works out on Sunday. Martin Truex, 9th. I think they were looking for a little more. Ross Chastain just slipped into the top 10 there. Eric Jones, again, the soccer club, Eric Jones. And Eric Jones, note, has run well at where we're headed this week at Nashville. But a nice 13th place finish for him. Harrison Burton with 2 top 20s in a row? What?
What is happening? Is the world ending?
It may be. I don't know. Michael McDowell shot himself in the foot. He was 15th. Ty Gibbs, 16th. I think they had higher hopes for him. Carson Hocevar, man, if he would just get some better equipment, I'd be a little more excited about Mr. Hocevar.
Yes, most certainly yes. But he's still making that Spire equipment into a regular top 20 competitor week in and week out most weeks. So he's still getting it done.
And unfortunately, Justin Haley bit us this week. Our free square did not free square us, so that was a bummer. And I got to tell you, man, Kyle Busch is in a slump. He is in a funk. I don't even know if the car was that bad. He just gave up. I mean, I know the tire was down, but that was bad.
Yeah, I do want to go back to Justin Haley for a second because even though we call him the free square, for a little while there, he looked like he was the free square and then some. He was right around the top 5 before the rain came out too.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I was shocked by it. I don't know if he got a little dinged up in a pit stop or they made a massive change, but he was looking. I mean, when I went back and looked at the end of the race, I was like, Haley was that bad? Because he was looking good at one point. So
I believe he got some damage at one point and then fell back a little bit. I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head.
That would make sense, though.
Yeah.
That would make sense, though. So anyway, that was last week's event. Bell Stalls show. I didn't really have a great DFS week. The bets were okay. Overall, it was fine. I mean, we had some good calls, especially on the bets. I'm a little disappointed with how DFS worked out. When you have the top 1 or 2 point scores and you still don't really cash much, it's a little frustrating. But I'll tell you, if we give you the top 2 point scores, it's racing. It's going to take a little bit of creativity and changing it up. Having Barry and Bell were great, but they weren't enough to do it all, in lineups. So on to next week. Onward and upward, as we like to say, right?
But considering how many times we mentioned Christopher Bell's name this past weekend, between his overall performance, how we expected him to do, and then even in the news because, he let a driver announcement slip in one of the best and most entertaining ways possible, right in the media. So that right there was pretty fun. We mentioned his name a lot this past weekend.
And Kyle Larson played off of it well. Like, I love the whole tweet to Chase Elliott wishing him congratulations.
That was amazing.
That was a well done job. And then Joe Gibbs did one better by having Bell announce the Chase Briscoe news officially at the press conference this week when they were like, well, now we kind of got to announce it.
Yeah, exactly. And there's our segue into the fact that we are going to talk about the news on the show, because now it's official. Chase Briscoe will drive the number 19 Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota, replacing Martin Truex Jr. in 2025 there, Rich. So we've been hearing about this for a while. Now it's official.
And they also made it official. It will be the 19. They're not bringing back the staple of the 18, which was the original Joe Gibbs number. I believe they still technically own it, but they decided not to run it. So I don't know what's going to happen there. Bass Pro Shops will still be the sponsor, which I'm kind of surprised we didn't see Noah Gragson, for example, go that route, because he's already had a relationship with Bass Pro Shops and a sponsorship there. But this is where Joe Gibbs felt like this is where they needed to be. Hat tip for Chase Briscoe for saying, look, if I don't start winning here, no one's going to give me a shot again because I've got no excuses. So at least he recognizes that. So I'm curious to see how the performance on the track looks next year. I didn't know that the deal was signed the week of Sonoma. That was a nice nugget by Sean. He dug that up.
Yeah, a few days after Stewart Haas Racing announced their intent publicly to close shop, and then that's when Chase Briscoe, he was talking about this to reporters, and he said that once Tony let him know that he's free to seek out their opportunities, he was talking about the very next day. That's when the Toyota Joe Gibbs Racing president Dave Alpern was calling him for breakfast. They discussed about that. And then from there, Briscoe was talking about how he also met with Wood Brothers Racing, because they were also talking to him and they gave him an offer as well. But he just said that he went with Joe Gibbs, partially also because they didn't ask him, what sort of sponsorship or money did you bring? They already must have figured out that Bass Pro was going to stick along. And then there you go.
Which is shocking to me, because Kyle Larson was the guy that had to come with $500,000 except for Chip Ganassi. And now you're telling me Chase Briscoe doesn't need to bring any money? Like, I just find that very interesting, right? Especially with all the news of Kyle Busch sponsorship in the past, and us talking about Stenhouse and Hamlin and some of those things going on. It's just very interesting that wasn't a requirement for him. I think Joe Gibbs sees Briscoe as a easy to market, no nonsense, lack of drama driver. And I think that's what they had in Truex. And I think they wanted that back in that car.
Yeah, I do think that was a very good part of that too. Also, I found it interesting that James Small will still be around as the crew chief for the number 19 team.
Oh, good, because they've had some speed. So, I mean, there's no need to make that, knee-jerk reaction change there. It may not work. We may hear, at this time next year, they may be doing something different. You're right. I do think this means Harrison Burton's out. I got to believe that Josh Berry's probably the next guy in line that they're talking to. If I were Wood Brothers, that's who I would be talking to. Okay. That's who I was going to
say that Josh Berry was also saying, I think it was either this past week or the week before, that he said that he was actually having conversations with Wood Brothers. So
it makes sense. As long as Wood Brothers is going to get some help from Penske, I'm good with it. I don't want to see Berry go backwards in equipment. Ryan Blaney did well in the 21, right? Not as well as he's doing with Penske, but I really want to see Berry. I thought Berry would have been a great fit in the 19 personally. I just don't think it was going to happen.
No, JGR, they wanted somebody a little bit younger, and Briscoe fit the exact age range that they were looking for. Somebody with a few years of Cup experience, somebody that hasn't had past beef with Ty Gibbs. Looking at Noah Gragson and Corey Heim right there with that one. And then
maybe Gibbs is the problem, though, and not Corey Heim and Noah Gragson. Just throwing that out
there. But yeah, with the fact that Briscoe mentioned that he did have the offer from Wood Brothers, that pretty much all but confirms that Harrison Burton is going to very much be out of that 21 car, as we were suspecting.
And that's fine. He hasn't been performing. I mean, back-to-back top 20 is great, but it's a little late there, bud. Andy Petrie retires immediately at RCR. I kind of saw this coming when we saw the Stenhouse Busch thing, because he kind of just stood there and did nothing. I thought that was telling for a competition director. Your upper management, you're just kind of sit back and let it happen. I get you're old school, but maybe you're too old school. And honestly, Keith Rodden stepping in that role. Rodden did a pretty good job crew chief in the last time he was on the box. I'm curious to see what RCR needs to make some changes. I'm hoping these are some in the right direction. We'll see.
Well, it's been said that, considering all the issues that RCR has had at the cup level in particular the past couple of weeks, I mean, I'm believing now that Kyle Busch has pretty much been cursed over the last couple of weeks because of all the crazy stuff that's been happening to him. And then that three team has just been out to lunch pretty much the entire year so far. You know what? You could even make an argument for last year with that as well. That something just had to be done. And then you see there, Andy Petrie, he's retiring from the team. Keith Rodden, who did crew chief for Austin Dillon last year in the earlier part of the season with Austin Dillon before he got swapped to Justin Alexander.
And I thought the car was decent at the beginning of last year. That's what I found shocking last year in all this. That's why I said I'm curious to see how this works, because I didn't think Rodden got done right. Now maybe Rodden didn't want that role. Maybe that's why there was a change. We don't know. But
he's going to be the interim competition director overseeing the two cars within RCR and Cup, and he's also going to he's taking over Petrie's old role overseeing all the competition between Cup and Xfinity. But because they said it's interim, we don't think this is going to be a permanent move, and they're probably going to have somebody else up there.
Well, maybe he can prove his worth, right? The Ream brothers added Frankie Muniz for 3 truck races, the number 22 Ford, and 1 ARCA race. He's going to have a name because he's Malcolm in the middle. He's looked good in ARCA at times, so I don't want to, poo-poo on the guy. But so far, what we've seen in trucks and Xfinity, he's not there yet.
To be fair, with the Xfinity side of things, he was with Joe Gibbs Racing making all his starts, and that is far from the top team. Let's be honest about that one.
I don't know that I consider RBR all that great. I mean, I'm not going to say they're bottom feeders because they're not, but they're nowhere near, the top 2 or 3 teams, in my opinion.
This one, I think, is a little bit of a better opportunity, I'd say, because they're not the very back. Let's put it that way.
No, that's what I said. They're better, but they're mid-pack, right? So we should get a better idea of what Frankie's got. I am excited about Mike Hillman Jr., though, going to Spencer Boyd, and this may seem crazy to people. Mike Hillman Jr. has been around in Cup, Xfinity, trucks. He's built some fast cars, doesn't have a championship, doesn't have a ton of wins, but they have been fast. Spencer Boyd, for us, for DFS purposes, was a great weekly value play. I mean, he was a free square like Justin Haley. You could count on him qualifying around 30th, excuse me, and finishing around 25th to 22nd like clockwork. Last year and a half, that hasn't been the case. They've missed some races. I'm excited to see this. I hope we go back to where I'm telling everyone, pay the $5,100, put Spencer Boyd at the bottom of the lineup, take your 12 to 15 to 20 points from him, and we'll build the roster with the other 5 guys.
There you go. That's exactly why I put the story on here, because I knew you'd bring some great insight. You were mentioning some of this stuff to me earlier in the week when we talked, and then seeing how Mike Hillman, he's the past teams he's been involved with, he's been bringing speed to them. Should be interesting to see how he's going to be able to get this going with the number 76 truck now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting the world on fire, but I'm expecting consistently making races and consistently, because Spencer does a great job avoiding crap. He'll get you. He will finish the race and not tear up the equipment. Like, he's a very smart, business savvy driver that, I don't think he's the best driver on the circuit, but he might be the most business savvy driver on the circuit, right? So I think hoping for top 25s on the regular basis, I think is fair now. We weren't getting that from them.
Yeah, it's going to be something that we'll have to watch. Maybe usually, as we know, competition changes like this don't always take into effect right away, but it should be interesting to see how it'll evolve. And then as he starts trending more upward, how soon can we catch that? That's the thing we got to watch for.
Right. And here again, will we see it on race trim first or qualifying trim first, right? Not every crew chief attack thing's the same. If we see Spencer Boyd start qualifying around 20th, I'm not using him. Not initially. If he continues to make races and qualifying 28th, 29th, 30th, at the price point he's at, we can do a lot worse because he's been cheap. He has been consistently one of the 3 to 4 lowest priced drivers on the truck slate. I don't foresee that changing. I don't see the books or DFS going, woo, Mike Hillman, woo, the world's on fire. That's not going to happen. But for me, I do think this is a marginal enough improvement that it'll benefit us.
Yep, and that's something that Vegas isn't going to pay attention to as much that we pay attention to, and then we relay that information to you so that way you know to hop on it, and then you all win more money there. That's for all of our viewers and listeners of the Race Guru Thunder Hour.
and hey, let me throw this out there. Our goal, like, we would prefer you guys win the money. Yes, we like winning money too, okay? But technically, our job here is to help you win. If you're having fun and you're winning money, that's the goal. If not, then we got to do a better job. That's ultimately what this is about.
Couldn't have said it better there. Let's get through this next news story here, because this is another announcement of a Cup driver going to Xfinity in a future race that's happening very soon. We have Daniel Suarez going to be racing for DGM Racing at the Chicago Street Course in the Xfinity Series. Rich, give me your first take on this.
Suarez has not performed on the road courses lately as well as I have expected. With that being said, this is a prime opportunity for him to hone some of those skills. And while I don't consider DGM one of the top competitors out there, Suarez, finishing inside the top 10 would be a big win for the team. And I think inside the top 5 would be a huge win for the team. And I think that's reasonable. We saw what Sam Hunt Racing did in the past with Sage Karam, right? And I understand Corey Haim's even improved upon that, but Suarez could use a little more wheel time on those road courses right now, I feel like.
It's interesting that we talk about the road courses, since the last time that DGM hit a road course that was also racing in the Cup Series, that was at Sonoma. They had Ross Chastain in the car that week. He ended up pulling a 9th place finish for them.
That's right, he did. Good call out.
Something to keep in mind.
That is something to keep in mind. Well, should we dig into some fun paint schemes this week?
Yeah, let's get into our paint scheme spotlight of the week. And consider this a prelude towards our pick section, where we're going to play the game of how much do we overlap this week? Because, well, spoiler alert, we actually overlap on all our paint scheme choices this week. So
they look good, man. And truth be told, I told Sean this. I click the link and I go through and I'm like, okay, these are the ones I like. And then I go in here and I go type them in and I'm like, wait, he has the same ones. Now I could go back and find some other ones, but I was like, I had too much going on today. So we're rolling with this.
Yep. So let's just talk about the paint schemes that we were able to dig up today. Let's start off with this great looking one. Ross Chastain's Busch Light Country paint scheme, which is a special paint scheme for Nashville this week. This paint scheme, it has a lot that you can really look into, which I love about it. There's a lot of small elements there, but it all kind of adds to the car's look and the paint scheme and just the way the colors use and kind of flow. It just looks very good, and it has that Busch Light feel to it there, Rich.
It has a 4th of July feel to it too.
Yeah, that's right. I especially am a fan of the hood.
That's what caught my eye. I was like, this is a very much a 4th of July kind of theme, and I'm digging it.
Yeah, the red hood where it has the Busch Light logo with country on it. I love the mountains on the side of the car too as well. There, Rich. The white mountains. It's like something almost drawn in, and then the red number is just like a nice contrast. It makes the car pop. Like really pop.
I don't disagree, man. It looks fire.
Yeah, musically fired. There you go. Because it is a musical paint scheme.
Right.
So let's get into the next one here. We have, driving for Spire Motorsports, we have Corey LaJoie's new Garner Trucking paint scheme here.
I'm not even familiar with Garner. This is a new kind of sponsor. But man, does this car look sexy.
Ooh, you said it right there. It looks sexy and fast. I mean, that's a great combination right there. I always like myself a sleek black car, But the way that the white and red is utilized with this, with the stripes on the bottom, but towards the side too, you have the stripe up top, the white stripe there. You have the Garner Trucking logo looking nice and fitting right into space there on the hood. The logo on the side, it looks awesome. And I find it funny. This is something I kind of thought of before we got on the show today as I looked at this paint scheme again, Rich. I find it funny that the G and the Garner logo on the side looks like a 9, so it looks like the car number could be car number 79.
It kind of does look that way. It really does.
I just found that very funny.
Maybe they should find a 79 to run.
That's a thought there. Whew.
Let's see. Oh, and you got another shout out here. You got a shout out for a Truck Series paint scheme.
Yes, for a driver that's making their first start in this series in quite some time, we have Clint Boyer. He's going to bring back a familiar scheme with the Rush Truck Centers paint scheme, which is a very classic-looking car, and he did actually use this exact paint scheme colors in his Cup Series paint scheme. How about that?
Oh, shoot, he sure did.
Yeah, this particular image that I've gathered here is from one of his 2019 paint schemes with Rush Truck Centers, but it's the same exact sort of paint scheme, especially on the front with the hood and to the sides, the yellow, the black, the red. I always find it interesting when we had paint schemes that kind of look like throwbacks, but this is a classic Cup paint scheme that's literally translated into a Truck Series paint scheme, and it looks great.
It does look good, and I'm excited. I don't have huge expectations for Boyer. I mentioned him in the article, and I want to mention this because we're going to get trended into it here shortly. I forgot Butterbean Queen was in this race, and I did not mention him in the overview article. So my apologies to everybody. I got kind of enamored with Boyer and Caden Honeycutt and some of the other things going on. So my bad, because Butterbean needs to be talked about.
Yes. And you know what? Since we talked through our paint schemes, let's just get right on into it and preview this upcoming race at Nashville. Rich, lay the stage out for us.
Well, Nashville's very unique, right? It's 1 1/3 miles. No other tracks we go to are 1 1/3 miles. It's concrete, like we mentioned previously. It's not flat like New Hampshire. It's a few more degrees of banking, but 11, 14 degrees is not a ton. We're not talking Charlotte-esque by any means. I forgot. I meant to double check Kansas because I think Kansas was a little bit flatter, or maybe Chicagoland. I'm getting them kind of confused. There's one of them that's around that. But here again, those are 1.5 mile tracks and pavement. So this can be very unique. Look, I'm approaching this week like I would any other intermediate track, right? Qualifying in the back isn't a death sentence. Sure, we'll have cars go a lap down a little bit earlier, but we're not talking a short track here where, within 20 laps, you're going to see the end of the field getting lapped. I do expect, we have seen multiple lap leaders. This isn't necessarily a track where one or two guys dominate the whole race. We have seen, as many as I think over the last 3 years, 11 different lap leaders in an event. I'm doing that from memory, so folks don't quote me on it, but it's somewhere in that ballpark. So there's going to be some mixing up. I mean, last year when I was looking at one of the events, there was 3 drivers that led between 37 and 82 laps. So it's going to be spread out. So we want dominators, but again, place differential and finishing order are going to be a much bigger deal than just getting the 1 or 2 guys that are going to lead a crap ton of laps.
Yeah, that's going to be a very important marker to note, especially because in last year's event, even though we did have a couple different drivers end up leading laps, we had 4 drivers in last year's race lead at least double digits. 3 of them led over 50. No driver led over 100 laps in last year's Cup event at Nashville.
Right, exactly. So, let's just assume, for argument's sake, that because they were all pretty close to where they finished. They were all top 5. We're split hairs on the differences because when you're getting 0.25 points, 0.45 points for fastest laps, when you have only a handful of laps of difference and place differential is only a difference of 1 point, you can have lineups that can have any sort of group of these guys. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
this will be I think this will be more fun of a race to do some DFS. I think you're going to have more viability going different directions than the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I can certainly believe that. Although I think it's going to be interesting when you consider qualifying could be a factor. You look back towards last week's race, half of the top 10 finishers were starting in the top 5. And then you look back towards the year before, only 2 drivers ended up finishing inside the top 10 that started outside of the top 10. So something to keep in mind. This could be a track where drivers that start towards the front or closer to the front could also tend to stay there too.
Which we've been seeing that on Cup races in general. You and I have talked about it, that as much as we've always loved practice times, I'm at the point of qualifying times are mattering to me at this point, because it sure seems like the cars that run decent in qualifying typically are racing decent. And the cars that aren't qualifying well have not historically been racing well. You know, the one-offs of the Sam Mayers and Corey Himes and the other lower level series. But in the Cup series, those cars, they don't have as much they can change on there with the front end geometry and the rear end geometry and things like that. So I'm with you on the Cup side of things. There is ability to win or gain on that place differential, but I don't know that we can necessarily count on a 30th qualified driver finishing 15th.
Yeah, not unless we know it's one of the top drivers that ended up missing it on qualifying.
Right. So, notable starts this week. I already touched on it, but Brandon Butterbean Queen in the number 1, Tricon and Trucks, that's going to matter. Clint Boyer in the number 7, as Sean has pointed out in the past for Spire, they're capable of winning. We've seen that this year. Ogatawa in the number 20 truck.
Akinori Ogata.
Yeah, Ogata, my bad. The number 20 truck. That's interesting. Mason Maggio in the 21. Frank Munoz in the 22. Dawson Sutton in the 26. Keith McGee in the 27. Brian Dolzat, the 28. Caden Honeycutt in the 45. That is one to keep in mind. Vegas likes him. Vegas has him at 9-1, which seems inflated. I wouldn't bet that, but that tells you that he's already caught people's eyes. Honeycutt might be finding himself in some better equipment here sooner than later, although Nice Motorsports isn't terrible. Connor Jones is back in the 66. Maybe he can man up and drive a car without power steering. We'll find out. Or a truck, I should say. Stephen Parsons in the 75. It's always an interesting name. You never know. He's capable of a top 15-ish or letting you down. So we'll have to watch that. Justin Carroll in the 90. I keep hoping Jack Wood will do something there in the 91, but we just haven't seen it yet. But it's a name to note. If you want to hit the Xfinity guys here, Sean.
All right, so Xfinity is a very interesting list. We first have the 2 JD Motorsports drivers, which are Dawson Cram in the 4 this week, Garrett Smithley in the 6. Always mentioned it before, but Smithley could always be an interesting value play to look at depending on the price and where he qualifies. You then have the 2 SS Greenlight racing cars with Patrick Emmerling in the 07. He's a familiar sight. And then Chad Fincham in the 14, which I don't know. That could really, I'm not really too excited about that one. Then you have the 2 Joe Gibbs Racing part-time drivers there. You have Ty Gibbs in the 19, John Hunter Nemechek in the 20. Between the 2, I have my eye on Gibbs more in the 19 because he's showcased some good runs before at Nashville. He's led laps. And JHN, he is pretty solid at this track too. He's no slouch either. We seen that 20-car win just 1 week ago, so they know how to get it done as well. Then in the Sam Hunt Racing entry, the number 26, we have Tyler Reddick hopping into the car there, which is very interesting thing to note. He could be somebody that we can consider for maybe a top 10 finish just based on the equipment and driver ability alone. Then you have the Rhett Jones Racing number 30 with Noah Gregson. They have that Stewart-Haas Racing Alliance, and Gregson finished inside the top 10 in this exact car earlier in the year with this team's only starting the Xfinity Series so far, so keep that in mind. You have Logan Bearden in the 35 for Joey Gase Motorsports, Jade Buford in the number 74. Carson Kvapil, as we discussed earlier, he's driving the 88 car once again this week for JRM. That's going to be one that we're really going to have to watch as well. And then you have Ross Chastain in the number 92 for DGM Racing this week, which really, depending on where he qualifies, he could pan out towards being a really, really nice DFS play.
It will be interesting. And for the Cup Series, Riley Herbst, who has a decent record here at this track, is getting a shot in a Cup car. I think we're seeing a little bit of a audition, if you will. As we've kind of hinted before. Yep, as we hinted before, Herbst is kind of coming with sponsorship, and his name's been floating around the Cup Garage. I think there's a couple of other drivers more deserving from a talent skill standpoint, but it's NASCAR. You got to bring sponsorship. AJ Allmendinger will be back in the 16. He's been kind of a letdown so far this year. We are excited to see Corey Heim in the 15.
Yes. This is the one that excites me this week for Cup. Corey Heim.
We are excited to see that. And I'm with you on Chad Fitchum in both the Xfinity and Cup. Not really on my radar. Maybe a value play, but a risky one at bets. So
he's not somebody I'm looking to roster at all this week. That 66
like
car in Cup, that's like the one team that you won't ever see me play.
No, I won't either. But every time I say someone's a fade, Sean, they get lucky and finish inside the top 20, and I look like a jackass. So I'm just not going to go there.
I'm just going to tell you, you don't play it this week, you're going to look very smart, Rich. I'm just telling you.
That's fair. I won't be using them. I can't think of a time I've ever used it. So
same.
But hey, if you like our content, please head over to fantasyguru.com, click the subscribe button, check out all the different packages. We have a plethora of options there. I guarantee you there is one for you. If you're not sure, hit up support at fantasyguru.com. If you want the all-in deal, hit up support at fantasyguru.com. Tell them Jeff sent you, not me, but Jeff, and see if they'll work out something for you. If you're going to sign up for football anyway, I recommend it. If you're more into the NASCAR and racing stuff, hey, take advantage of our Game Time MVP package for $39.99. We thank you on behalf of Fantasy Guru and the Elite Plus Network, but you give us a shout out over there on our YouTube channel, and we'll greatly appreciate it.
Yes.
Well, Sean, should we get into our DFS players here, man? And again, as Sean alluded to, we do have a lot of overlap.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's play a game of how much will overlap this week, because I'm sure there's going to be quite a bit of that here. And it all just begins with our top price drivers to watch. And, well, as far as overlap is concerned, we do have quite a bit of that here. So going forth within my list here of top price drivers to watch, I have Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, and Ross Chastain. Larson and Chastain, they've both won at this track before. This is one of Ross Chastain's best tracks statistically, and Trackhouse considers this like a home race for them, so they're going to be pouring some of their best equipment into this race in particular. And we know that Chastain, he has not won a race yet this year. He's going to be hungry in order to win. And then Kyle Larson, we know he's good any week that you can use him, but this is a good track for him too. And as for C. Bell, well, he's finished top 10 in 3 starts so far at Nashville in his Cup career. This is not a bad track for him either, but you do have to remember, he's got those intermediates figured out. He's got some of these shorter, flatter ovals figured out. This race could fall into his hands too, and I like the price point for him overall.
And I'm pulling from memory here, but over the last 5 races, Bell has 2 wins, like 3 top 5s and 4 top 10s, and he's the only one with that many, maybe 5 top 10s. I'm trying to remember. He is by far the best the last 5 races, and it's not even close. I'm with you on Larson. I'm with you on Bell. I'm feeling Elliott this week, and I don't hate the Ross Chastain call. I think that's spot on, and I'll be frank, they need to pour some extra money into it because Ross has not been particularly fast over the last 6 weeks. Not bad, but he has not been where we had hoped or expected him to. Yeah, Elliott had kind of a letdown last week after he did lead some laps, but he has been quietly putting together one of the best seasons. When you look at top 5s and top 10s, he also has won here. He also has run well here. So I'm pivoting to Elliott over Chastain, but I have no problem with the Chastain call.
I have no problem with the Elliott call either overall. He's a former winner. He's done pretty solidly at this track before. And, well, we didn't mention it earlier. I put this in the notes earlier when we were talking about the New Hampshire finishes. But Chase Elliott, he kept his top 20 streak alive, was still finishing in the top 20 in every points-paying race so far this year. So that's got to count for something there, too.
Well, and they battled back because they, like I said, they were near the front, and then they had some troubles, and they battled to get that finish. So hat tip to the number 9 team there, and Alan Gustafson sitting on the box. Our mid-tier options, it's a good thing Sean threw a curveball in here because otherwise we were overlapping a lot.
Yeah, just like the previous tier, we had a lot of the same drivers so far, but with one real difference or so. So let's just say this. We had 3 drivers to cover here. Well, technically I covered 4 because one of my picks kind of depends on the site you're playing on a little bit. I mean, the 3 drivers we did end up covering, both of us, me and Rich, were Ty Gibbs, Josh Berry, and Corey Heim. Ty Gibbs, I mentioned it earlier, he's had some good runs at this track in Xfinity, led laps, and this sort of track type, I think, fits into Ty Gibbs' wheelhouse overall. He can put together a good run there, compete for a top 10 finish. JGR, they tend to have some good equipment on tracks like this. He's someone I'm keeping my eye on. As for Josh Berry, well, we noted it there. Berry, he's been really, really putting on some good finishes in the last couple of weeks. And this has also been a very good track for him in the Xfinity Series as well. So he's got some experience there with running some good cars. And then Corey Heim, well, Heim, out of all the races they could have picked for Corey Heim, I think this was one of the best decisions that they could have made considering how good he is at this track in the Truck Series, which is kind of crazy when you think about it too. And for the price point, love it.
And he gets, I mean, the nice thing with Heim is he's going to race Friday night and then race, so he's not going to have to rush like we see, at other times. So I'm with you. I'm with you on Heim. He's in better equipment than he was driving earlier this year when he was subbing. So
yeah, much better equipment.
So and he outperformed the equipment then, in my opinion. I'm with you on Berry. We said it before the show. Barry's got one coming. He's on the cusp. A win is coming. I would love to see him get a win because that's going to help him get the next opportunity. And I would like to see him in another top level equipment because I do think he deserves it. This is a racer's racer. He's drag raced. He's sprint raced. He's stock car race. I mean, this guy is a student of the sport. You listen to interviews with him. You can tell why sometimes it's a slow going process. Like the first 4 races last year when he filled in for Chase, it took him a little while. Then when he kind of got a feel for it, he was pretty impressive given the short, tenure he had there in the Cup Series. So I'm with you there. Yeah, Gibbs doing double duty. Gibbs is in some of the best equipment. He's getting it done.
Oh, yeah. And just to quickly mention it too, Rich alluded that I had a curveball here. I didn't mention said curveball, but that's just because this is particularly a FanDuel pick. But I like Josh Berry on both sites overall, but this is a driver that I think we should watch for a little bit more on FanDuel because of the price difference, and that's Daniel Suarez. Now, this is actually one of Suarez's best tracks in the Cup Series based on stats so far that isn't a road course. And I mentioned it earlier, Trackhouse Racing treats this as a home track race for them, so they're going to be pouring more resources into making sure that they go to get a good finish. And Suarez, for the price point, I think is worth taking a chance on, especially for FanDuel lineups. Whereas DraftKings, I still like him there too, because historically he's been great at this track. But the price point is so close to Josh Berry's that I lean Berry for DraftKings, but Suarez for FanDuel.
Fair enough. Honestly, this group is pretty solid. There's a couple other value plays, and we'll get to the sleepers and bargains here. But the Soccer Club had a couple of decent finishes last week, and the Soccer Club's got 2 guys that have had decent history at this track, especially Mr. Eric Jones. I'm mentioning because we don't have them listed in our sleepers, but I want to throw it out there. We did see some improvement with the Soccer Club the last week. Eric Jones has been pretty good here on the cusp of top 10s in the past. So I don't want to completely, kick him to the curb. He's a little higher priced than some of our other guys, but it's something to keep in mind. On our sleepers and bargains, hey, I'm not taking Sean's thunder. I was going to piggyback his Todd Gilliland pick here, but the man has been pushing Todd Gilliland before I could say Gilliland properly. So I got to give Sean his proper due here. He's leading us off with Todd Gilliland. I think that's a great call when you think about everything that's been going on. So even though I don't list him, I do want to give him props on that call because I think that's an excellent call.
Yeah, as I will say, I could say the same thing about you listing Justin Haley for your three there, because, that's another driver that we've been pushing him all year, and I still like Haley on any given week there too. He's not within my three this week just because I think the track fits Gilliland a little bit better than Haley, but still not a bad call, I'd say, overall. And if you wanted to roll with it, I'd say you got my approval there too.
He's so cheap. And I really toyed between Eric Jones and Justin Haley here. I had forgotten about how they ran last week, that they being the soccer club. Had I kind of recalled that, I may have put Eric Jones here over Haley. Eric Jones really does. I mean, if you look at the 3 races here, not just because he's raced here. Shoot, did he race here in Xfinity? He raced in another series, and I can't remember off the top of my head. And he had a decent run in that ride, whatever it was. He gets it done, man. That is another driver I just wish would get in some better equipment right now.
Yeah, truly. But Eric Jones, he was somebody I was considering as well, just based on the history alone. But for me, Eric Jones and using him is going to be very qualifying dependent, just because.
And money.
Yeah.
I mean, where your other money's coming from, because he's not the cheapest value guy that we've talked about. He's on the higher end of that scale. So, at $200 to $300, you may not really have that option.
Yeah, and for around the same price, I would like to spend a little bit more for Gilliland when he's been a little more consistent lately too.
Right. So we're both on Ricky Stenhouse.
Yes.
Look, Stenhouse has been looking better lately, man. And I don't know if that wreck, because he wasn't that slow when Busch and him got into it. I don't know if that just motivated the team because Ricky went out there and was like, let's go. And the team's like, that's our boy. But they've been good lately, man. I mean, at least as far as showing speed.
Yeah, for sure. And this is also actually surprisingly a decent track for Stenhouse as well. In all 3 of his starts in the Cup Series, he's scored positive place differential every time. And for the price point there, and with how well that 47 team has been running lately, definitely worth taking a chance for the price, especially on both sides. I mean, it is a really good price point.
He's cheap. He's come down in price. Riley Herbst, we both are on. Look, Rick Ware Racing, as much as we've dogged them in the past, they're better than the soccer club for the year so far. So I'll put that way. Last week, not so much. But Herbst is getting a shot here. And the big selling point, at least on my perspective, is cost.
Yes. That is the same case for me as well. He is one of the cheapest drivers on both sites. I mean, practically you may not even have to deal with him on FanDuel, but if you do stick him onto FanDuel, you could just put 3 or 4 other top drivers and still feel like you're okay. Because Riley Herbst also, he's been actually surprisingly better than you might think at Xfinity in this particular track. He has 3 top 10 finishes in 3 Xfinity Series starts, and his best finish was a runner-up finish. So he has 2 podium finishes at this track within the Xfinity Series, and he's somebody that I do like a lot for Xfinity, especially because he's been actually finishing a little bit more with the equipment in Xfinity. But for the Cup side of things, considering the price, definitely worth taking a chance, especially with those Rick Ware cars no longer being the butt of all jokes in the field.
No. Jimmy Johnson is these days. Funny how things change. So let's get into some Corvette. Again, we have a ton of overlap in our Corvette winners. I actually only went with 3 and 1 long shot instead of 4 and a long shot. I miscounted there, so my apologies to everyone. If I'll tell you who my 4th one is if you want. It won't be a shocker, but surprise, both Sean and I like Kyle Larson. I mean, I don't care where we go, Sean. And I know he's consistently the favorite. I don't like betting the favorites, but quite frankly, there's not a circuit on the schedule that I feel like Kyle Larson can't win at.
Other than Daytona or Talladega. Or Atlanta.
I still think he can. I know he hasn't Xfinity, but I know he hasn't in Cup. I still think he's capable. It's kind of like Martin Truex. Martin Truex has had nothing but rotten luck at those places. He's been up front. They're capable of winning. They just don't have the luck. But here again, I would argue when it comes to actual racing skill, those two tracks take the least. It's more about finding momentum, getting luck, and putting your car at the right place at the right time. You don't really get to control your own destiny. Those are two drivers I think that have always walked to the beat of their own drum.
Fair enough, fair enough. Even though there is a different sort of skill involved within those tracks, I'd say. But it's not the same exact skill as like other sorts of tracks. And we talked about that on this show before, but you know, it's just something that some drivers have a knack for it, others may not as much.
Well, and what's funny to me is those tracks are so fluky, in my opinion. You look at Dale Earnhardt, who was the most winning driver ever at Daytona, and he hadn't had a Daytona 500 victory at that point. I mean, just think about that for perspective. He won all the duels and all the clashes and all these other things, but couldn't get the 500. You look at Tony Stewart. He's run well at those tracks. He also doesn't have a Daytona 500 win. He has won at Daytona, but not a Daytona 500 win, right? So anyway, that's a topic for a whole nother day as I just threw my pen across the house here. But hopefully I don't need to do any more writing the rest of the show. So anyway, we'll move on from that. So hit us with your next one here, Sean.
Okay, so let's go through my betting core four as Rich goes forth and gathers around his writing utensils here. So for the betting core four that I have Kyle Larson at plus 400, Denny Hamlin at plus 550, Ross Chastain at plus 750, and then Christopher Bell at plus 750. Those are the four that I have as my betting favorites. But my long shot bet is Josh Berry at plus 4,500.
So for me, to get a fourth, I'll put Ross Chastain in there. But my guys are Larson, Christopher Bell. I'm still on Elliott over Hamlin. If I'm going to get a choice to get another one in there, like I said, Ross deserves to be in there. So give me Elliott, Ross. And interesting, Elliott and Ross are very close to the same odds. I think Elliott's 800 or 850. Ross is 750. Bell is 750. So really the guys I like are some of the better ones to pay. So, and I'm with you. Give me the long shot and Barry. I'll throw a buck on 45 to 1 and take my shots. And I'll probably put $2 on a top 5 finish or something, or $3 or something like that. But I think Barry's worth throwing a little nugget at.
Yeah, I definitely do think so. Even though I was also debating between perhaps Ty Gibbs or Blaney or Logano, or even maybe Corey Heim if I really wanted to feel daring. But I just kept coming back to Barry for the outright win. So
I did too, man. I can't shake. And maybe it's recency bias, but the dude's been getting it done the last month. So, and hey, stories sell and work in NASCAR. Barry winning would be a big story right now. So.
Indeed. Let's go through our DFS core fours real quick here. I'll just start us off here with mine.
Hey, we had some differences.
Yeah, that's right. Exciting times. Whoa. Kyle Larson, 10,500 on DraftKings, 14,000 on FanDuel. Ross Chastain, 9,000 on DraftKings. Love the price there. And 12,500 on FanDuel, where he's a little more expensive. Corey Heim, I absolutely love the price. 2311 equipment there. 7,200 on DraftKings, 5,800 on FanDuel. And then my cheap play to round out the DFS core four for value, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., 6,300 on DraftKings, 4,200 on FanDuel. Rich, hit us with what you got.
Well, I want to change mine now, because now the more I look at this, I think there's a different way to approach this and leave a whole lot more money left over where you can get funky with the lineup. So I'm going to throw a curveball at you here, Sean. I apologize. I'm going with Bell at 10,000. Initially, I had Elliott with Bell at 9,700. Honestly, you could flip-flop those two if you wanted. I do think as hot as Bell has been, I'm having a hard time fading him. I do believe in momentum in racing. It's a thing in my world. So it's hard for me to fade Bell or get off of him, especially since he's not the highest priced driver this week. Elliott, I think, is a fair value at 9,700. I do have a lot of love for him, but I think I'd rather place a bet on Elliott to win and maybe fade him in my DFS lineups. So if I'm going to go Bell and fade Elliott, I'm going with 3 value mid-tier to sleeper guys. Give me Corey Heim at 7,200 because that is a steal of a price, especially in Trackhouse equipment. I think he's an automatic for a top 15-ish finish. I really do. Josh Berry at 7,700, I think is a great play. Again, same kind of concept. and then Stenhouse at 6,300. If you go something like a Bell/Elliott with Heim, Barry, Stenhouse, you have plenty of money left over to either go after Hamlin, Larson, or Bell, Elliott, or add a couple of mid-tier guys that we've talked about, like a Ty Gibbs, maybe even a John Hunter Nemechek. I mean, he did have a nice run last week, right? So I think that's kind of where I'm pivoting here. Give me Bell, Barry, Heim, and Stenhouse, and I think that gives you a ton of options to play with your lineups.
I like those options there. One other mid-tier driver I am going to mention, though, too, that we didn't talk about much that also does have my eye for the price, especially on DK this week, Joey Logano.
Oh, fair enough.
8,600.
That's cheap for him.
Yeah.
He's had a couple of bad races, and they're hating on Joey right now.
Yeah, I think he's one that we can watch over, especially based on he's had some decent runs so far within Nashville itself. 8,600, I think, is one of the lowest prices we've seen for Logano all season. He's 9,500 on FanDuel as well. He's somebody that I think we should keep an eye on too, especially if the practice numbers and the car is looking good for him.
Qualifying, we'll see it qualifying, right? Like we talked about.
Yeah, we shall see.
Well, everyone, thank you for tuning in to the Fantasy Guru. FantasyGuru.com presents RaceGuru Thunder Hour. I am really struggling today, folks. We have had some things at the house here that just have not been ideal, and at work, my day job. So I apologize. I'm a little discombobulated. This is the RaceGuru Thunder Hour, brought to you by FantasyGuru.com and the Elite Plus Network. We thank you so much for tuning in. Please check out the YouTube channel. Hit that like, subscribe button. Click on subscribe at FantasyGuru.com. If you're not sure what package makes sense, hit us up. We'll be more than happy to answer questions. Let us know what you're looking for. Let us know what kind of data you want, what kind of takes you want. You want betting, you only want DFS, vice versa, whatever. Hit us up. We're more than happy to point you in the right direction. On behalf of Sean Engel, this is Rich Maletto. Please give Sean a follow at Twitter at SeanE247. You can find me at Fantasy Bosco. Thank you for tuning in. Peace.